James Mercer Langston Hughes was born on February 1, 1902, in Joplin, Missouri. His parents, James Hughes and Carrie Langston, separated soon after his birth, and his father moved to Mexico. While Hughes's mother moved around during his youth, Hughes was raised primarily by his maternal grandmother, Mary, until she tragically died in his early teens. From that point, he went to live with his mother, and they moved to several cities before eventually settling in Cleveland, Ohio. It was during this time that Hughes first began to write poetry. Langston Hughes graduated from high school in 1920 and spent the following year in Mexico with his father. Around this time, Hughes's poem, The Negro Speaks of Rivers, was published in The Crisis magazine and was highly praised. In 1921, Hughes returned to the United States and enrolled at Columbia University, where he studied briefly, and during which time he quickly became a part of Harlem's cultural movement, which is commonly known as the Harlem Renaissance. But Hughes dropped out of Columbia in 1922 and worked various odd jobs around New York for the following year, before signing on as a steward on a freighter that took him to Africa and Spain. He left the ship in 1924 and lived for a brief time in Paris, where he continued to develop and publish his poetry. In November 1924, Hughes returned to the United States and worked various jobs. In 1925, he was working as a busboy in a Washington, D.C. hotel restaurant when he met American poet Vachel Lindsay. Hughes showed some of his poems to Lindsay, who was impressed enough to use his connections to promote Hughes's poetry and bring it to a wider audience. Hughes also received a scholarship to attend Lincoln University in Pennsylvania. After his graduation from Lincoln in 1929, Hughes published his first successful novel, Not Without Laughter. The book was commercially successful enough to convince Hughes that he could make a living as a writer. During the 1930s, Hughes would frequently travel throughout the United States on lecture tours, and also abroad to the Soviet Union, Japan, and Haiti. He continued to write and publish poetry during this time as well. On May 22, 1967, Langston Hughes died from complications of prostate cancer. A tribute to his poetry, his funeral contained little spoken eulogy, but was instead filled with jazz and blues music. Hughes's ashes were buried beneath the entrance of the Author Center in Harlem. The inscription marking the spot features a line from Hughes's poem, The Negro Speaks of Rivers. It reads, "My soul has grown deep like the rivers."
I went down to the river and sat down on the bank. I tried to think, but couldn't, so I jumped in and sank. I came up once and hollered. I came up twice and cried. If that water hadn't a been too cold, I might have sunk and died. But it was cold, that water. It was cold, it was cold. I took the elevator, 16 floors above the ground. I thought about my baby, and I thought I would jump down. I stood there and I hollered. I stood there and I cried. If I hadn't a been so high, I might have jumped and died. But it was high up there. It was high. So since I'm still here living, I guess I will live on. I could have died for love, but for living I was born. Though you may hear me holler, and you may see me cry. I'll be dogged, sweet baby, if you gonna see me die. Life is fine, fine as wine. Life is fine.
Many of Langston Hughes's poems were used as an outlet for his frustrations regarding the prejudice and discrimination that faced the African American community. But many of Hughes's poems, though seemingly depressing in the beginning, are encouragements to enjoy life. In his poem, Life is Fine, Hughes particularly brings out the significance of life, which is often reinforced by obstacles that people encounter in their journeys. The poem is a wonderful piece of work as it concentrates on hardships of not only the African American community, but all of humanity. The tone of Hughes in this poem is forceful and bitter, and also critical. The bitterness in the poet's tone is evoked when he emphasizes the unavoidable failure when the speaker tries to kill himself 2 times. At the same time, Hughes also criticizes our superficiality through the disregard of life that the speaker shows in the poem. Hence, the mood created is realistic and gloomy at first, but it becomes more positive if the speaker finally realizes that life is fine. Life is Fine by Langston Hughes successfully conveys one of humanity's most fundamental cognitions. Life is sacred, and we should not let it waste. Life and death may seem to be 2 extremely opposite concepts, but if people could not be enlightened soon enough, the distance between life and death is literally just a jump away. Life is Fine proves that all lives are sacred and should be valued, which was an important message back then and still is today. Langston Hughes is considered one of America's greatest poets. During the 1920s, Hughes was one of the leading figures of the Harlem Renaissance, an explosion of African American cultural vivacity that sprang up in Harlem, New York. His poetry covered the issues faced by African Americans with a combination of music, cheerfulness, and culture. Hughes spoke to the concerns of the Harlem Renaissance as it celebrated African American creative innovations such as blues, spirituals, jazz, and literary work that engaged African American life. Inspiration from Langston Hughes is witnessed in modern culture and society. Even though the movement has been over since, the effects of his writing are still present today. So, I chose Langston Hughes because he has always inspired me as a writer. During a time when his ideas and feelings would not always be appreciated, he still had the courage to speak up for both himself and others. The poetry that he creatively put into the world inspired millions, and I could only hope to do the same thing one day.